And this is WHCR 90.3 FM. This is Building Bread with Kevin Matthews, and I have an amazing guest for you. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So now that they have heard your lovely voice, let me go ahead and introduce you properly. Tara Falcone is a certified financial planner professional, a CFA charter holder, and founder of Rise Up. Rise Up is a financial service company committed to increasing financial education and access. Its flagship program, LIT, teaches college students the basics of money so they can tackle their finances before and after graduation. I know we need that. Her courses, Money and Wealth, show individuals and corporate employees how to build a strong financial foundation and create a game plan for their future. After graduating from Yale in 2011, Tara started her career as an investment analyst at a hedge fund in New York City. In 2015, she left to dedicate her time and knowledge to a larger audience through Rise Up. Her mission is to empower people to rise up and use money as a tool to achieve their bigger life goals. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a Friday. I can't complain.
You know what? I can't. After surviving that, whatever that winter thing was.
Polar vortex in 2019.
So, anyway, aside from that, I want to talk to the audience real quick because what you've accomplished really within that first line, really the first two lines, is incredible. So for those that don't know, in the financial industry, the CFP, Certified Financial Planner designation, is one of the most difficult designations to achieve. You have to have 3 years experience, you have to pass an exam, you have to do almost 6 months of coursework. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But then on top of that, you have your CFA, which is, and if you Google the toughest exams, it is one of the top 5 or 6 up there. So you got those two things. And then to be a woman in finance is also difficult. At least when I was a financial advisor, I think they said 17% of all financial advisors were women. So it's hard to pull mentors. It's not always the best environment. And then you're an entrepreneur. So you've done all the impossible things. So tell me why? Why was this something that you wanted to pursue?
It's a great question. And thanks for that great bio and really highlighting all the things that I've done and the glutton for punishment that I happen to chase all the time. It really all started from in my background. So to give you a little insight into who I am, I'm born and raised in the Midwest, grew up in a small town in Michigan. My father passed away when I was 13, didn't have any life insurance, didn't have an emergency fund, had lots of credit card debt because he was very ill and couldn't work for a long time. And so I knew what it was to struggle through high school and to have to work to support myself. And I channeled all of that negative energy into my schoolwork because that's kind of what I had control over and where I felt safe. And ended up graduating as valedictorian and going to Yale on a full need-based scholarship. So I kind of say that I was fortunately unfortunate in that I was so low income that they're here, we'll pay for this for you. And my eyes were opened there to just the different levels of financial possibility that are available to someone. Because growing up in my small hometown, who we assumed was the wealthiest in our town was maybe a dentist or a doctor. Meanwhile, I'm going to school with people like me, but also some other kids whose parents are CEOs or had founded enormous Fortune 500 companies, and was really just very surprised and intimidated at the beginning of what kind of was a possible to me. I was pre-med and a Spanish major all through college, but I got to the end of my senior year and realized that I couldn't even afford to apply to medical school. I had done all of this work. I had taken organic chemistry, which is no picnic, let me tell you. You think the CFA exams are hard, or goes a whole other level. And I just was fed up with being broke. I had $600 to my name. I had worked my butt off to get where I was, and I felt as though when I was graduating, I was back at that same place that I had been when I graduated from high school, financially. And I was I now have a Yale degree, and there's nothing really there. What do I do with it? And so I was kind of faced with 2 decisions. It was either go back, move home, work at the diner I used to waitress at, and try to make some money while applying to college or applying to medical school, or figure out this money thing. And to me that meant trying to get a job on Wall Street like a lot of my friends and my then boyfriend, now husband, did, to actually learn how the pros manage money and how I could stop the cycle with me and learn how to create like a solid financial foundation for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really where the Wall Street side came in, where the financial planner side came in. But ultimately I decided to leave, even though I loved my job, I loved the people I was working with. Ultimately decided to leave because I felt like I wasn't being true to my roots.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like, you know, I was going to work every day, and my job basically was to like pick stocks and investments for our clients who were far wealthier than, you know, the people I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would leave the office and I would have text messages or voicemails from friends and family asking for help with like credit cards or student loans or their 401k. And I just thought, wow, there is such a difference and a gap here between in knowledge and, you know, opportunity and access between these, like the Main Street and the Wall Street crowd. What can I do about it?
Yeah.
And that was really where the seed for Rise Up was planted.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that it's how common that story of I'm doing this thing on Wall Street, I'm learning all these amazing things, but the people at home aren't getting the same information or the same access. For those that don't know, which you should know at this point, but born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, my father and parents never invested in the stock market, didn't know what a stock was. Like, it was all completely foreign to all of us. And as I started my career as a financial advisor, I'm like, oh, you should do this, you should do this. Like, let me see your 401k. Like, how does this whole thing work?
Show me that 401k.
Yeah, and the further I got in my career, the further I got away from the people I wanted to help. When I started, I could help anybody. Like, you are a living, breathing person. You could be a client of mine. We'd work out the deal and like slowly grow your wealth. Towards the end of my career, I was ranked in the top 100. I had some awards and stuff, and there was like a bar. It was like, look, you can't talk to anyone. They can't come into your office unless they have $250,000 in cash.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have it, you ain't talking to them. And I'm looking around like, I don't have that in cash.
Right?
You know, like, eventually, yeah, sure, but I don't have it. My parents don't have it, and like, what am I really doing this for? It was fun. It was exciting. I learned a ton. But just like you, I wanted to go back to my roots. And in going to that, there were two things in your bio and something that you had mentioned earlier about access. And access is different than just, I don't know, availability. Those are two different things. So tell me, why did you want to increase access? Why did you choose that word? And how do you see that most people do not have access to that?
So I think access to me is really like a level playing field. And that's really what I was trying to accomplish in starting Rise Up, especially starting with the investing content that I had started with. And I think that, you know, just personally, like in my soul, I believe that everybody deserves to have a fundamental foundation of financial knowledge so that they can make smart decisions for themselves. That to me is just something that we all, as Americans in this amazing country that we live in, should have. Meanwhile, there's an enormous wealth gap in our country. There's an enormous education gap. There's an enormous information gap when it comes to investing and just personal finance in general. And so to me, that's really where it is like it's just not a level playing field. And I realized that as I experienced my own financial transformation coming from, you know, the blue collar, low income side of my upbringing into like the Wall Street white collar side, where, like you said, you were having fun, you know, making pretty good money for your age. But I really quickly realized that the playing field is just not level at all. And even though a lot of like fintech companies are doing incredible things by trying to make apps that make investing much easier or more affordable or what have you, to me, if you don't have that fundamental knowledge of core concepts, you're not going to be able to actually utilize those tools in the way that they were designed to be used, and to your best benefit. Right. And so it's really both like the education component combined with kind of the access, like having access to that education first of all, but then also having access to other things that, you know, kind of have traditionally been reserved for Wall Street.
Yeah, and I think the awareness part of it is interesting too, because I've run into people who may have enough to invest on the side or to use one of those apps that because they make it more accessible, but they don't know what questions to ask to begin with. There are people who, like, yeah, I want to invest, but I have no idea where to start. What do I even Google? So I wanted to ask you, why don't you think, in your opinion, why don't you see or feel that financial literacy is emphasized today?
Like in education?
Yeah.
I think kind of it's like a three-pronged issue, in my opinion. So, I mean, first of all, teachers in this country do an incredible amount for our society and are not paid nearly as much as they should be. Right, can we get like a clap, right?
I'm sorry, like nodding.
You know,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
So they're already stretched so thin with the curricula that they're required to teach and the, you know, assessments that they're required to make sure that their students can pass and all these other things that it's just unimaginable to really think about burdening them with this other layer of education when a lot of times they themselves are so kind of in such a bad financial situation that they can't manage their own finances very well. So I think that's number one. I think number two is that, the question that always comes up with for me, and we had somebody else in the FinCon community in the last couple of weeks, Tiffany Alicia, the Budgetnista, helped in New Jersey, helped pass a law that's going to require financial education in the public school system. And I think it's incredible, but the first question that comes to mind to me as somebody with these credentials is like, well, who's going to teach that curriculum? Who is qualified or who has the time or bandwidth to actually do that in every single school that it should be taught in? So that's question number two, is like, who's actually qualified? Because if you think about, okay, we're already not paying our teachers enough, and then you have the people who have the credentials and the knowledge and skill set to actually teach this information, but they have plenty of other higher paying opportunities available to them, right? They can work at a financial planning firm. They can work on Wall Street where, the income is infinite. So unless we start paying people better for the teaching that they're doing, I think it's going to be really hard to kind of move and corral that talent over to that side. And then the third part is really like, what is going to be cut from the curriculum that exists already? We've already seen, because of like shoestring budgets, we've seen the annihilation of art and music and phys ed and other things that people, want and should be taking in school as children. So the question then is, well, what else can we cut? If we want to add this, we have to remove some from somewhere, and where is that, void going to be created? Yeah,
those are excellent points, and we've done some, as I was telling you about my day job and everything, we've done some research on that, and initially we're talking 30s, 40s, 50s in the United States, where personal finance in some form or fashion was initially taught in home ec. Like, that's where it was. Like, we'll teach you how to budget, how to buy, what coupons do, and then like all the other things about how you manage the home in an economic fashion. And then that started, like you said, started to get cut. Additionally, though, it's interesting because anywhere between 80 to 90% of students and parents say that learning finance is important and it should be taught in schools. But then it's not. But then on the opposite end, as you mentioned earlier, I think it's around 60 to 70% of teachers don't feel comfortable teaching it because they don't feel that they're in a comfortable enough position to say, like, here's what you should do. And a part of that is because they don't get paid.
Right.
So it's like, because you don't get paid, you're not securing your finances to teach, and because you don't teach it, the kids don't know. And it's a crazy cycle. Yeah. It's a crazy cycle. So yeah, one other thing, and we had talked about this on our last show with Jeffrey Skinner Perkins about college. And that's an entirely different conversation when it comes to cost and everything. But your experience at Yale, it gave you a different perspective. And you had to adjust because that wasn't an environment that you were used to. I had to adjust in mine, but mine was completely different. Tell me how you adjusted to that and how you thought that exposure changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, I think the adjustment was fierce. I mean, it was a culture shock to the extreme, and not from like a race, religion, ethnicity perspective. I mean, that was a little bit too, given I'm from a real small town in Michigan, but the socioeconomic diversity that existed there was really interesting for me to experience. And I think there was one specific moment that I like to highlight, which was I was in chemistry section on like a Tuesday night as a freshman, taking like Chem 113, and the TA was asking loads of questions. And so many people around me, their hands were shooting up, and I knew from having met them during orientation that they had gone to, this private school or that private school or whatever, and they had taken 2 years of chemistry, and all that was required at the time in the state of Michigan was like a half a semester of chemistry. So like, I knew what the periodic table was, but really not much more than that. And I felt in that moment, I was sitting in the back of the class, I distinctly remember like the physical feeling that I had, which was, okay, Tara, you can either let this drown you. Right, this is a sink or swim moment. You can either let this bring you down, or you can use this as fuel for your fire to show yourself, your family, all these people here that you deserve to be here despite your financial inadequacies. And that's really what I did. I just kind of said, like, I got this, like, kind of pulled up my bootstraps and kept moving forward. So that was really the adjustment. It was like a lot of it was just on me. At the time, there wasn't any sort of like financial literacy or financial education component, especially not for first-gen low-income students like me. Now that has changed, thanks to me and a number of other people on campus that are doing a lot of really good work. But at the time, that's really where I was, and I just knew as time went by in my 4 years there that I didn't want to live that life anymore, and that I owed it to myself, to my family, who had, whose sort of like backs and shoulders I had stood on, after my dad passed away especially, that I owed it to them to figure out a better way forward. And that's what I ended up doing, and that's why I, applied to jobs on Wall Street and told people, like, hey, I don't know anything about what you do, but I need to learn. I'm hungry to learn. I'm a blank slate. I don't have any sort of like academic or professional bias. I'm not going to say, oh, well, this is how I was showed to do it in my internship, right? Because I didn't have any of that. I was just like, I don't know what you do. I want to know what you do. Please teach me. I need to learn this so badly. And they hired me on the spot.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Interestingly enough, on and I like to tell this part too, on what would have been my dad's 45th birthday if he was still alive.
Wow.
So that date has like some really interesting kind of, there's always some like, universe magic happening like on that day. And so I'd like to think that that was like a sign that I had made the right decision and that I was moving in the right direction. Right.
That's a very, very good point. If you're now tuning in, this is Building Bread with Kevin Matthews on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. When we come back, we have a few more questions that we'd like to ask. If you have any questions, please tweet us or Instagram us. I don't know how that works. But feel free to tweet us at BuildingBread, and we can answer a few of the questions at the end should we get to it. Again, this is WACR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.